You have also heard that a reason to deny these resolutions or to not even discuss them is it's not really an issue that we can directly impact. But the federal government is solely responsible for this matter. Well, I'm not really going to argue that. The federal government has the ultimate responsibility. However, is that any reason for us to be silent? I don't think so. But if so, why have we waded into these very types of issues in the past where the federal government is responsible? And we had no discussion of not going there because the federal government had the ultimate responsibility. It wasn't all too long ago that we did exactly that when the City Council, I think at least 5 of the current 7 City Council members, adopted a resolution, that's the type of action it's on our agenda tonight, in opposition to trucks coming from Mexico carrying goods into the United States and into Canada. We adopted a resolution in opposition to those trucks not being required to have the same air quality standards or the same safety standards. I think Councilmember Benham brought that issue forward, and she was right to do that. It was perfectly fine for us to state a position that we thought was important about an issue that we really didn't have the final say in. And I don't know where that issue sits today, but that was several years ago. I think the California legislature, I read somewhere recently, is actually just now taking that issue up. So if we're going to be intellectually honest about this debate, then I don't think we can use those arguments to not go into this issue. So let's look at each one individually. To adopt English as our official language does not mean English only. And I have seen it described that way. I've heard it talked about tonight in a way that could be described that way. The First Amendment obviously guarantees everyone's right to freedom of speech. My presumption is that's in any language you like, whether that's in your home or on the steps of City Hall. We would do our business in English, we would conduct our meetings in English, our correspondence would be in English. That would remain in effect should it be adopted until a future council decided to change it. Is that symbolic? Yeah, it's symbolic. Is it substantive as well? I believe it is. What could be more substantive than how we communicate with each other? You're also going to hear, or you probably have heard already, it's not going to do any good. Keep an open mind for just one moment and ask, well, what if it could do some good? What would that look like? What if this small act promoted the use of the English language, which it does? Is that something bad and something that we should avoid at all costs? Of course it isn't. Here's an argument that I find very interesting, and that is promoting the use of English, it could be argued, does much more for the non-English speaking community than it does for the English speaking community. Because remember, I think it's a wonderful thing if you can speak 2, 3, 4, 5 languages. To explain that question, though, the question of how could that possibly be? How does it help the non-English speaking community? You need to ask yourself one question. I've never heard of this instance ever. Can you name one person, just one person, that has come to this country, made a conscious decision to not learn the English language, and that decision has made them more successful? I don't know of an instance. I've asked around. I haven't heard of any such case. So if not learning English doesn't increase your chances of success, and learning and becoming proficient in English does increase your chances of success, then why would we not encourage that? I think the answer is obviously we should. I'll tell you who gets this: the Chinese. While Chinese is the second most commonly spoken language after English, the Chinese are currently requiring their school children to learn to read, write, and speak English. They recognize that English is the predominant language of business. We ought to recognize the same. That does not denigrate the Spanish language or French or German or any other language. It simply means, I believe, we ought to adopt it as our official language. Would it do any good? Well, it might not. But what if city after city after city after city adopted English as their official language? Might that not get the attention of some folks in government at a much higher level than we are? Turning to the sanctuary city issue. We're currently not a sanctuary city. You're going to hear that as a reason to not support that resolution. Although the statement or this resolution says we're not a sanctuary city. I presume that would be because we need to say so that we are a sanctuary city to become one. It's certainly been stated that staying silent on that issue by default means you are not a sanctuary city. All right. I'm stating that I believe if you say you're not a sanctuary city, that also means you're not a sanctuary city. It's a much clearer, upfront, and open way of doing so than remaining silent. This is a possibility. It's quite possibly a more fiscally responsible way of doing things. Federal law currently prohibits cities from acting in that way, from becoming sanctuary cities, although the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, provided no penalty for cities that did so. Should a penalty be imposed on sanctuary cities, an adopted resolution stating that we aren't one could be helpful in keeping federal money, our own tax dollars, flowing to the city. Some people will say it's toothless. I'd be happy to add a portion to this particular resolution asking the federal government to enact strict penalties on those cities that have become sanctuary cities. Additionally, this issue of sanctuary cities directly affects public safety services, a service provided by our police department. I heard a couple of interesting things tonight, but if you're looking for a substantive issue, look no further than public safety. Logic would dictate that declaring ourselves not to be a sanctuary city would send a strong signal to those that would look to do us harm, whether they are members of gangs. That is a subject that gets a lot of attention around here, or affiliates of any type of terrorist group. Now, this concern is going to be cast as a red herring, and it already has been. Tell that to the folks in Newark, New Jersey, and tell that to the intelligence agencies that have a large presence in the San Joaquin Valley, even here in Bakersfield, and they are not here for no reason. That is not to say that everyone who comes across the border, legally or illegally, to work is a terrorist. It's not what that means. It'll probably be twisted that way tomorrow morning, but that is not what that means. I recognize that good people come across the border. They may do it illegally, but a lot of people come across the border to work and to make a better life for themselves and their families. Some come to access services that they don't pay for. I don't particularly like that. Some come here from countries all over the world to do us harm. And as a way of an illustration, everybody walked through that door, those two doors tonight. If you all knew that you were all coming here to work, you wouldn't care so much about that. You wouldn't be too concerned about your safety. If you knew that one of you came here to hurt somebody else, rather indiscriminately, by the way, I think you'd all be concerned about that.